America is the land of bright lights and broken dreams, a place that delights and inspires a hunger for fame. It's also a place that some people find hard to leave, even after death.
My name's Gail Porter and I'm a skeptic.
My name is Chris Fleming and I am a sensitive.
It's my mission to investigate alleged sightings and hauntings of Hollywood ghosts.
A sensitive can detect paranormal events beyond the range of the 5 senses.
I wouldn't say I'm a non-believer, but I'm definitely a skeptic.
Together, our mission is to investigate the dead famous. James Dean is one of the most idolized screen stars of all time, a man who became an icon of American culture in a spectacularly brief career.
His fascination with fast cars was well known, and it would ultimately be the death of him. The drive to his tragic fate started here, in this street in Los Angeles, and finished just outside Paso Robles in California. But many believe that his journey didn't end there.
Along with Marilyn and Elvis, James Dean was one of the most famous celebrity ghosts, reappearing in many forms and guises all across America.
James Dean lived fast and died young. At 5:59 on September the 30th, 1955, Dean's Porsche Spider collided with another vehicle at the intersection of highways 46 and 41. He was 24 years old. His image lives on, but does his spirit? Our journey would retrace his drive of that final fateful day. But would the brevity of his life and the violent nature of his death prove too much for our emotions as we endeavour to find his spirit?
What? Why are you bringing me here?
Don't do that, stop being weird.
Dean hit Hollywood in 1951. This famous rebel without a cause became a giant after just 3 films. It took Jimmy Dean just 4 years to become a huge star, but before he became a star, he was dead. On screen, Dean proved to be an enigmatic, brooding character. His trademark was the rebel with the vulnerable side. But who was the real James Dean? Who was the man that so many loved, yet lost? I began my investigation by tracking down one of his close friends in Hollywood, the actress Mila Nurmi. Most famously known as Vampira, Mila was a huge cult figure as the host of a popular late-night horror movie show. But she was proving to be a hard woman to track down. I'd sent Chris to Studio City in North Hollywood to speak to the actress Elizabeth Dizzy Sheridan. She's best known for her role as Jerry Seinfeld's mother in the eponymous comedy series. But in the early 50s, Dizzy had a passionate yet ultimately ill-fated romance with the young James Dean. Jimmy and Dizzy met one rainy afternoon in Manhattan. Dean was there in search of Broadway stardom. Dizzy was an aspiring dancer. They lived together and were even engaged to be married.
You wrote a book here called Dizzy and Jimmy.
Yes, I did.
With a life with James Dean, so obviously you got closer to him than most people would. What was he like as a man?
I never knew him as a man. I knew him as a boy trying to be a man.
Why do you think James Dean's memory and his image is so enduring and relevant today?
I laugh, because my take on it was, I tell you, he was blind as a bat, and he always looked so... And I think if he wore glasses and he looked more in charge of himself, people wouldn't be so lonely for him all the time. Oh, that poor boy.
It was believed that James would, have this life living fast, dying young type attitude. Do you think he was obsessed at all with death? Like living on the edge?
That is such bullshit.
Really?
Yes. He wasn't suicidal, and he wasn't obsessed with driving, but when he drove fast, and it didn't bother me because so did I.
Where were you, and how did you feel when you first heard about his tragic death?
I was getting drunk on a beach in the St. Thomas in the island of Virgin Islands, and I was devastated.
How do you think people felt that he died?
It's tragic. It is a tragic story. He died so young, and people were reaching out for him, and all of a sudden he was gone, and people never get over that.
Tell me, how have you felt his presence? You still sense that he's around?
I get the feeling that every once in a while he's taking care of me, or he's laughing like hell at this, like today. I mean, I'm sure he's sitting somewhere just on the edge of a cloud, his feet dangling, and he's smoking a cigarette and just laughing.
If Jimmy was still around today, what do you think he'd be doing?
Like I said, I wonder if he'd have any hair.
Across town, I'd finally found Vampira in an LA restaurant. While she looked different to her infamous gothic image of the 50s, her eccentric spirit was still evident. James and Vampira were kindred spirits, and their connection lasted beyond his death.
What was it about Jimmy Dean that attracted you to him?
He's a spirit reborn. Many of us are, not here for the first time. He was an old soul, and I think maybe they put a few people in the same package, a few spirits.
Really? And how long were you friends for?
Oh, I think it was about 17 months. Well, still, I guess.
And where were you when you found out about the crash?
Oh, I was at home and the phone rang, and my friend now phoned and said, have you heard the news? And I said, what news? And he said, he's dead.
Did he know that he was going to die young?
Well, we were walking on Hollywood Boulevard in early September 1955. And it said, extra, extra, and the extra said, Robert Francis is killed in a plane crash. And Jimmy said, that's the second one. They happen in threes. I'm next. And he was next. People that were closest to Jimmy, almost all of them nearly died immediately afterward. Their lives were, I had like 2 or 3 serious accidents, weird, strange, unnatural. Well, we're driving along on this lovely sunny day, exquisite sky, and Jimmy was not yet buried, but he was dead. And I said to my friend, John, who was driving, Jimmy is up there with God, or hit in the rear like that, and skidded broadside into the oncoming traffic. And nothing hit us, surprisingly. So we limped over, now we were damaged, we limped over into the parking lot of Ciro's, and the car behind us that had hit us came in to make arrangements with our driver. That was Marlon Brando, who had hit us. And then when Marlon came out to compare notes with my driver and saw that it was me, he said, I smell death in my nostrils.
He said that?
He said, Marlon said, I smell death in my nostrils. Yeah.
Has Jimmy contacted you since his death?
He had told me when he was going to contact me that he would do it with fire, with lighting a white candle. But then suddenly I'd feel him and the ashtray would go up in flames. And I'd say, don't anybody touch the ashtray. It's going to go up in flames because Jimmy is here. And it would go up.
Do you think that his spirit would be at peace now?
He's at peace now. I think he's wherever he's supposed to be doing other things.
Darkness crept upon LA. I felt encouraged by Vampira's recollections. Lots of people have claimed to have seen his ghost. Would we be amongst them? James Dean is best known for Rebel Without a Cause. It's also a film shrouded in mystery. Hollywood legend tells of a terrible curse that fell upon the film's 3 leads. James Dean died in a high-speed car crash, Natalie Wood drowned in a suspicious boating accident, and Sal Mineo was stabbed to death in a vicious murder outside his Hollywood home. He was 37 at the time. Was Rebel Without a Cause really cursed? Could any of the 3 stars have escaped their tragic destiny? Perhaps a visit to Mineo's murder site would reveal some clues. Chris and I met up with Greg, a resident at the apartment block where Mineo died. He had agreed to take us to the exact site of the killing.
How much do you actually know about what happened to Sal on that evening when he died?
Well, the story that I know is that he was directing a play at the Westwood Playhouse. He came home at about 9:30 that night, and he would have been parked in this garage. He got out of his car and then apparently was attacked. During the struggle, he was stabbed. His body was found right here, but he had lost so much blood that actually his body was taken away by the coroner. There wasn't even time to get to paramedics or take him to a hospital.
Chris, do you feel anything? Have you felt anything while we've walked up this walkway, or do you sense anything at all?
Well, actually, earlier before we started shooting, I was pacing back and forth here. I started realizing, oh my God, something occurred right here. As we came through here, I felt more emotion. I started getting really sad because it was like I was witnessing somebody dying. He was terrified, terrified. He was actually tackled here. He was stabbed. The knife was still in him, and he started screaming. At this point, the person pushed him over here because he kept screaming, and he's trying to go this way. And it was so loud because everything was, the voice was just carrying out here. So he put the body here because he felt that it would take a longer time for somebody to see him. He left it here, and then he ran. Yeah, right here.
Chris seemed unable to deal with whatever emotions this sight brought up. Hours later, unable to sleep, he found himself randomly wandering the streets of LA. He seemed confused. What thoughts were tormenting him, and what connection did they have to our search for the spirit of James Dean?
James, what are you bringing me?
Chris felt drawn to Sunset Boulevard and the Viper Room.
What? Why are you bringing me here?
This is the place where River Phoenix died.
Man, I just feel so sick.
Could Chris have been tuning into more than just the energy of the original James Dean? Was his spirit trying to help Chris make a connection between those who lived fast and died young?
This is not what I expected him to show me. This is not nice for me to feel this sick.
Whatever it was, he couldn't take any more. Chris had found our first day difficult, so how would he feel on the journey in the days ahead? Would the recreation of a trip that would wipe out one of the world's brightest stars prove even more difficult to take?
Don't do that. Stop being weird.
The sun was slow to rise in the Los Angeles morning sky. We were about to retrace Dean's last journey on that fateful day in September 1955. Our quest? To see if his spirit lives on. James Dean's last day is rumoured to have begun with brunch here at the Farmer's Market, a favourite hangout for the young star. Chris and I started the day with the same breakfast Dean is believed to have had.
Coffee? Well, this is where James came on his, for his breakfast the morning of the race. Before we talk about James, I want to know a bit more about last night. What happened?
Well, I didn't sleep too well, but it's really hard when you get these emotions and these feelings of witnessing a death and playing it over, and you have to separate it from your own emotions. So it takes me a little while to kind of calm down.
But it was very interesting last night, but this is going to be much more interesting. We're actually going to take the route that James took before he before he crashed his car. So I'm going to actually draw you a little map of the whole journey. Right. So obviously he started here in LA. He left sometime in the morning, and then he headed off. He actually got stopped on his journey, and he got stopped at Cairns County. And he got stopped, ironically enough, for speeding. The next time he stopped wasn't for quite a while, and that was at Blackwell's Corner. And basically that was just a refreshment stop. We stopped, had a Coke, had something to eat, and he actually bumped into a couple of friends of his who were also on the way to the same race that he was in. So he got back into his car, and his journey carried on for approximately about an hour or so, until his crash just outside Paso Roble, and that was at 5:59.
He died there?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's it. That's your road trip.
You know how to get there?
I just drew him up.
Okay. Show me the way.
Before Dean left for the race in North California, he rendezvoused with his mechanic, Rolf Witherich, at Competition Motors on Vine Street. It was there that he picked up the vehicle that would drive him to his death, the now notorious Porsche Spider.
So, Gail, where have you taken me to?
Well, this is actually where James started his fateful journey. This used to be like a mechanical shop. It was called Competition Motors. And he came here to pick up his Porsche about 7:45 in the morning on the day he died. Do you want to take a wee look?
Sure, looks like it's changed a bit.
Yeah, it has a bit. Come on then. You can take a look over here. So you see they've actually got a picture of what Competition Motors look like.
Oh, yeah. You wouldn't even recognize it today.
And underneath, in 1955, James Dean bought and worked on his Porsche sports car in this building. This mural is for Jimmy and his love of fast machines. And if you take a look over there, there's a picture of his car. And underneath, it's got the date, September the 30th, the time he left, 7:45 in the morning.
It's a shame that it's been desecrated like this.
I know. Do you feel anything? Is there anything from this site that you can pick up, any energies that have been left here?
No, I really don't feel anything at all. I mean, this is just a landmark. Someplace that he's been and been remembered, but I really don't feel any energy.
I'd like you to take me to Bakersfield, please.
All right.
Just like James Dean had done, we headed north out of Los Angeles towards Bakersfield. But before we hit the freeway, there was one more stop I wanted to make. One more person who might be able to unlock the mystery of James Dean's death. George Barris is the king of Hollywood customizers. A friend of Jimmy's, he has a replica of the Porsche that James Dean died in.
George, how well did you actually know James?
Jimmy and I got together when we did Rebel Without a Cause. And we did the chicken scene where we did all the chases and that. And actually why we got together is because he loved to race and he loved cars. And so we've been what we call bench racing pals.
George, what was it about this car that James liked so much?
Well, we first started out with a Triumph, not enough power. Then went to the Speedster, not enough power. And the hot thing in '55 was the Spider.
George was with James the day he died, so I asked him what actually happened.
What we did is had it on the trailer, was at the gas station, we filled up all the gas, and we said, okay, let's get on the road. And we started going on the road, and he stopped. He said, I want to drive it. Come on, Jim. That's 350 miles. No. So Bill and all of us, we unhooked it, took the trailer, followed him up. Then Wolf says, hey, I'll ride with you. And it's about 5:30 at night, and the sun's starting to get down, and this little silver car blasting on the road, going into Salinas and Gilmore, and where actually 41 and 466 highway meets is where turn speed starts to make a left turn. And Jimmy's going, and he says to Wolf, he says, you think he's going to stop? And Wolf said, Jimmy, no, he's not going to stop. So Jimmy, with the instinct of racing, is not going to slam on his brakes and slide into him, broadslide him. He's going to try to get away from him. So he kicks it down a gear, just like we showed him, puts his foot on it, and puts a 360 to go around him. And he would have done it. But the guy just didn't give him that one split second that he needed. He hit him right at the fender, and as you can see, there's no protection. Right through the fender, right through the door. The steering wheel come up, hit him in the neck, broke his neck immediately, and spun the car out, and the mechanic went out the other side.
Whatever happened to the car then? Did somebody rebuild it, or?
I purchased a car from the family. We took the engine, we sold it to a doctor. In turn, he sold a part to another doctor who went upside down, killed himself. Transmission went to another race car guy, went sideways, he paralyzed his arm. One guy stole some of the metal from the original car as it was parked, and he called me and says, take this away from me. I lost my wife, I lost my house, I lost my business, I lost this, and I'm dying of cancer.
Wow.
And why? We go up to Seattle, Washington. Some guy tried to steal the steering wheel. He falls down and breaks his arm. We're up in San Jose. The tailgate comes down on the truck, falls down, hits the guy's up, breaks both his legs. We're in Fresno. We're in a building, getting ready for the show. The building burns down. The car was shipped to Florida for a police convention, and they loaded it on a truck and trailer. And 8 days later, it come out here, and we opened up the trailer, and there was just the title of the car, and the car was gone. Just a trail of just unusual things that happened, and that's how we got the name, The Curse of the James Dean's Death Car.
As we drove north on Highway 5, I wonder why it seemed that everything Jimmy touched appeared to be cursed. As we entered Kern County, the weather changed dramatically. Mist engulfed us as we drove past the area known as the Grapevine. This was where California Highway Patrolman Ottie V. Hunter pulled James Dean over for speeding. Our first stop en route to the crash site was Minter Field, a desolate airfield where Dean used to race his beloved cars. It was at this location that James Dean witnessed the death of fellow driver Jack Drummond. Dean claimed that his dreams were tormented by this incident and that Drummond's ghost was haunting him. I left Chris outside waiting for parapsychologist Richard Sennett while I spoke to Pamela Nordstrom.
So could you tell me what is the connection between this airfield and James Dean?
During the 1950s, James Dean raced here during some of the annual races, and the last race that was documented was in 1955, just prior to his death that year, and it was on an actual racetrack. In between the runways, there was a lot of asphalt built during the 40s, and James Dean actually raced here in his Porsche, Spider Porsche, during the 1950s.
Do you know how often he would come here?
We don't have too much documentation about the earlier races, but the one in 1955 was well documented and shows that he placed second and lists his trophies that he received during that racing.
I followed Pamela, the airfield's manager, to the area where the races took place. There was a cold chill in the night air. Would James Dean's spirit make its presence felt here, a place that he loved?
So this is it then?
This is it, the large expanse you see between the lighted runway there, the runway here, and one to the north. And this is where the racetrack encompassed most of this area you see. And they had pits in between. They actually had stands erected because it was continual racing for several years.
Because we're doing a spiritual search for James Dean, I'm going to hang out here for a little bit longer. My colleague Chris is going to join me, if that's okay. Do you mind?
That'd be terrific.
Thank you very much for everything.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Gail.
I waited alone for Chris and Richard to join me.
Hi guys, how are you doing?
Not here long?
Could you see me? I was all dressed in black.
Just saw this floating head.
No, I haven't been here too long actually.
Well, it's certainly
enough.
cold enough for
Yeah.
ghosts.
Do you think this is a good place for us to come and have a look for the spirits?
I think it's ideal. It's a great place to start your search for the ghost of James Dean. He lived for that rush.
Yeah.
And driving at 100 miles an hour on a track where danger was just a jerk of the wheel away is something that had him in its spell. And he became addicted to it. Remember, a lot of people raced here. A lot of them may well have perished in the races. And this was an airfield where they trained fighter pilots for World War II. How many of them crashed on this tarmac? Back in the days of propeller-driven airplanes, lots of people accidentally walked into the spinning propellers and died. More than one airfield has headless ghosts caused by that quick action.
I'm glad you're here with me though, but you are kind of freaking me out a little bit.
There's something here. It's not happy, is it?
No, I'm not happy either.
Every time I see something, I try to take a picture and the freaking camera's off.
It's very still.
It's very still. Where's Chris?
I would be very surprised if he doesn't pick up something from that racing era. In fact, it was one of these races where he got beaten by a spider.
Did he come second?
Yeah, he came in second, and the poor spider beat him. So, of course, he wanted to get one.
Yeah.
I've heard of places where they hear automobiles from the past.
Whether it's just my mind just thinking or whatever, but I can just see cars going. Just going by. It's either red or blue. Dark blue.
James Dean's racing car was blue. There's no way that Chris had known that, but I still wasn't convinced that there was noticeable paranormal activity at the airfield.
You getting anything connected to James Dean?
The only thing I felt connected is because I already know that, that cars have raced down here, and I'm sitting here thinking, okay, I'm envisioning, what kind of car would he be driving in this race, this and that, and I can sense that, yeah, he's been here.
How can you single him out and not everyone else? That's what I'm asking. How can you pick out that one person because you know the story? Why can't you pick out anyone else?
We're trying to investigate him, we're trying to find him, so it's like I can feel, okay, that's him.
I don't understand.
I can't explain anything more specific. Something telling me, well, that's James Dean.
I need to understand how you can pick out only one energy and know it's James Dean, but yet you're saying there's hundreds and hundreds.
Well, because when I was standing here and just thinking about cars going by, sorry, I just thought I saw something, so.
Perhaps Chris had seen something. I turned my head to follow his gaze, and when looking back at the nighttime camera, we did see an object moving on its own behind me. With no possible light source around, what could this peculiar object be? Could it have been an orb? Orbs are believed to be the most common configuration pattern for the spirits of the dead. The sphere is considered the ideal vehicle for moving about and may represent one or more spirits or souls. Is this what we caught on camera?
Tonight has been a really, really weird night. I'm really kind of frustrated and annoyed because we've been to Wintersfield. Chris, I'm finding it really frustrating and really hard to pick up what he's talking about. And when I ask him questions, he gets very snappy with me and doesn't give me any succinct answer and doesn't prove to me anything. He just goes, well, I just feel that, and that's it.
It's so hard to explain to somebody because your whole life you've been able to sense these things, and to get someone right there to explain it to them and make them realize what you feel and what you sense, it's like impossible.
I really just could cry because I'm not getting anywhere and I'm not understanding, and I felt like I was banging my head against a brick wall.
To get her to open up and use abilities that we all have, these psychic abilities, these sensitive abilities, becoming in touch with the past, present, and future, it's hard to teach somebody that. It's hard to explain that to somebody. It just happens naturally.
Tensions between Chris and I were running high, but our search for the ghost of James Dean had to continue. Would the insight of another psychic give me the proof I so desperately wanted? And how would Chris cope visiting the exact spot where James Dean died?
What are you getting? Don't do that. Stop being weird.
The sun failed to rise in Bakersfield as I waited for Chris to arrive. Our efforts the night before at the airfield had shed little light on our search for the spirit of James Dean, but had caused some friction between us.
Good morning.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm doing all right.
Yeah. Sorry if I pushed you a lot last night. It's just, it's difficult for me, and I am trying my hardest to understand. So you're really going to have to be as, succinct and eloquent as possible to inform me of what's going on.
I think it's frustrating for me too, though, is because you don't fully comprehend or understand exactly what I'm feeling.
No.
And it's hard for you to accept or get an idea of what I'm feeling or what I'm seeing, whether it's apparitions or energy levels or anything like that. And I apologize, but it gets frustrating because it's hard for me to explain because it's an experience. And I really want you to see the things that I'm seeing.
Okay.
Hopefully I'll get something on tape to show you.
Yeah, it'd be cool.
So where are we going to today?
Well, if you just drive, we're going to go and see a man about a ghost.
All right.
I wanted to call in on Warren Beath, an author who had written 2 books on James Dean and who claimed to have seen his ghost himself.
Warren, you wrote a book about the death of James Dean. What was it that inspired you to write it?
At an early age, I identified with his character and the person that was depicted on the screen, and found his image, luminous, and it seemed to speak to me for some reason. And my father had been on he was a highway patrolman. He'd been on the pistol team with the policeman who gave him a ticket that day, so I felt there was that sort of connection. But I enjoyed the films and felt sort of an identification.
Now, that site is supposed to be quite active, and as you say, you've had an experience there yourself. Can you talk us through what exactly happened to you?
On a day that was extraordinarily foggy, I turned onto a road. I saw something from the corner of my eye, and I believed it was a hitchhiker. And it was a figure. It was a blonde figure in a red jacket, and we passed, and then I suspected that it was someone, a fan that had come out, because occasionally they'll come in replica cars or in that type of dress, and I was interested in talking to him, and slowed slightly and looked, and it was James Dean. I thought that's what, but immediately the other thought, it can't be, and I had a sighting. It's startling.
We left Warren and headed west on the 46 towards Paso Roble. This was also the road in which Hitchcock filmed the classic crop dusting sequence in North by Northwest, a road that has taken many lives. James Dean's last stop before the fatal crash was at Blackwell's Corner. In his day, a small cafe, but now a larger convenience store. We were due to meet Richard Sennett and his wife Debbie, a psychic, to see if we could pick up any scent of the spirit of Dean.
Hi. I'm looking for Brock Smith.
Hi, I'm Brock Smith.
Oh, hi, Brock. I'm Gail. I'm here for a chat about James Dean.
Blackwell's Corner itself has an interesting history. Its last owners had been wiped out years previously in a mysterious fire that swept through the store. 11 people died. Had the curse of James Dean extended to here?
So, could you tell me the history between Blackwell's Corner and James Dean?
Yes, this was James Dean's last stop. So that day, he stopped here, him and his mechanic, stopped here, got a bite to eat, and he also met a son of an actor. So they were chatting here and talking, and then After they were done, he got in his car, and about 25 miles west, he was killed.
Has there been reported paranormal activity around here? What with, obviously the James Dean connection and the fact that you're so near to the San Andreas Fault?
As far as paranormal, I don't know. There was one story that we were told by this gentleman that came in here, and he was driving down the road, and he said he was driving along, and he looked over, and there was a gentleman sitting next to him, and as he was driving along, he looked over again, he was gone. And when he stopped here at Blackwell's, he seen the poster of James Dean and said this was the guy that was sitting next to me while I was driving down the road, and he was really freaked out, really spooked. And also, this road is nicknamed Blood Alley.
Outside, Chris waited for Richard and Debbie Sennett to arrive. Could Debbie's psychic powers give us the answers we were looking for?
Richard, you made it.
Yes, a long drive.
I see you brought Debbie with too.
Yes.
Hi, Chris.
Debbie, how are you? It's good to meet you.
Doing great.
So tell me, you brought her along. What do we hope to accomplish today?
Well, I'm hoping to do some psychometry today. And I know that psychometry isn't normally done with objects, but I'm able to go to a site and be able to pick up the feelings and the emotions. Sometimes I can pick up still pictures, and other times I can pick up like moving pictures. And it's real frustrating with the moving pictures because it's like walking into the middle of a really good movie, and I don't see the beginning and I don't see the end. I just kind of walk in the middle of it.
Well, let me ask you this. What do you think we're going to hope to accomplish by taking you to a site that James Dean's been at? What do you think you'll pick up?
Well, I'm hoping that I can pick up the past, because if I can pick up the past, maybe I can pick up the emotions or pick up what was actually happening to him when he was at this site in 1955.
Oh, that would be great. I think that would help out Gail and I a lot in this investigation.
I hope so.
Good show.
Well, let's get out and take a look. Sure.
I had decided to hold a psychometry session under the tree to the side of the garage. This is where Dean and his mechanic Rolf were believed to have parked the Porsche, although I hadn't told Debbie this information.
Not feeling anything around the tree at all. I'm getting a feeling of going further in. Okay, wait a minute. Okay, I'm actually getting something here. Oh. Okay, I'm getting an argument, is what I'm getting. I'm getting an argument between Ralph and James. They're arguing back and forth about who's going to drive. Ralph really didn't want him to drive at this point. He wanted to trade the driving, and Jimmy said no. He refused it. I see a silver car with red markings coming off to the back. Okay. There's like red stripe marks coming off to the back. His main reason for even driving it was to be able to open it up on these roads. That was his main reason. It wasn't because practice or anything. He just wanted to open that car up, and he felt that this was the best route for him to be able to open the car up. Ralph himself was like, okay, you got a ticket, you're tired, you've got a headache, you're not feeling well, let me take over. And James, he just walks away, and Ralph was very disgusted. And finally it was just like, okay, fine, you go ahead and continue driving.
This is new information, the idea that they were arguing. I don't think I've ever heard that before.
Debbie's insight into an alleged argument between Dean and his mechanic was interesting. Could that have explained why he sped off so quickly? Had that argument been the final link in the chain that would lead to his death? We needed to move on. I wanted to reach the crash site at the exact time Jimmy had. As the sun set sleepily over the mountains, would Chris feel what James Dean had felt at the moment of impact?
What is it? Don't do that. Stop being weird. Oh, I'm sad.
Chris and I had reached the final leg of our journey to find the spirit of James Dean. We'd heard many stories of strange paranormal events connected to him, but we had found little evidence to suggest that Jimmy was still around. If he wasn't giving us any signs. Yet. I hoped the sight of James Dean's death would bring us some results. I'd arranged to meet Jack Lawrence, a Dean enthusiast who owned an exact replica of the poor spider Jimmy had died in.
That's a very impressive car. Although I must admit, it's slightly morbid to have a copy of the car that James Dean died in, don't you think?
It is. I'm a bit morbid. When I finally acquired one about 4 years ago, everybody would say that's just like James Dean's car, and I kind of pointed out the things that were different, and I got tired of pointing out the things that were different, and now I point out the things that are identical.
You must have been quite a big fan of his to do this. What was it about James Dean that appealed to you?
Well, I just think that life is a very frail thing, and you can be taken out at 24, and everybody should live life to the fullest, and I think this car represents that.
Now, I know that his car was supposed to be cursed.
There is somewhat of a curse, and I have a paint chip from his car. And I kind of drive around with it as kind of a little reminder to keep the speed down a little bit, because if that paint chip is cursed, then it just reminds me to be careful.
I wanted Chris to try and sense how Jimmy felt in the final minutes of his life as he sped along Highway 46 towards a head-on collision with student Donald Turnipseed at the intersection with the 41.
Nice drive. It's a beautiful drive.
The sun was fading. The evening chill was descending.
The path that he took on his last drive. This is it.
And the exact time of his death was approaching.
But on September 30th at 5:45 p.m., the sun would have been right on the horizon. And just like now, it's right in our face. It would have been even harder to see.
Yeah, I can see how that sun kind of blinds you.
Yeah, definitely. Somewhat of a mirage under certain lighting conditions makes it very difficult to see. That's why this is a turn on your headlight section of the freeway.
Okay.
Just a little bit extra step for safety. It goes a long ways.
Did he have his headlights on or not?
He did not have his headlights on. This is State Route 41 we're coming up on, which veers off to our right. Donald Turnipseed was taking a left. He was able to see the car behind James Dean, but he wasn't able to see James Dean's car until it was too late. Donald Turnipseed would have been right here, turning left in front of us in the Y part of the intersection right here, and just didn't see James Dean on time. He perished on the side of the road right here on the right. There he goes.
Yeah.
I feel a little guilty going west from this point on.
Yeah.
Every time.
So what exactly happened at this spot?
We believe that this is the very place where James Dean's car, his Spider, finally came to rest. Right here on this site is where he passed away. His little car went spinning end over end and ended up right here against a telephone pole that used to be here. They say that he broke his neck. Almost every bone in his body was shattered by the collision.
And there's been supposed sightings, isn't there, around here?
Right. Remarkably, people have heard on nights when fog covers this whole area, they hear the screeching tires, the smashing sounds of the two cars coming together. People have actually seen James Dean's figure walking, hitchhiking down this very road late at night. Some say they see blood all over his face.
So how did you get on in the car? Did you feel anything at all?
No, it was fun. I was like, it was just so open and so free, just driving, you know. But I didn't feel safe in it, though. It's like being in a little cardboard box.
Yeah, it doesn't look like a safe car. Did you get any paranormal feelings?
No, I didn't feel really anything that was mysterious. It was more like just freedom. It's like not a care in the world.
Mm. Well, I had a chat with Richard and Debbie, and Debbie took me to the part where she actually thought James Dean died at, and I gave her a tiny little piece of the paintwork from the original car. Well, she felt like, you know, she felt that he knew he was going to die after the crash. She felt like he didn't die right away.
He didn't?
She thinks it was a couple of minutes, which is quite weird, because we've heard different stories on that one.
Yeah, George said that the steering wheel went up into his neck, into his throat, and he died instantly.
Yeah. So it would be quite interesting to see what you think. Do you want to go and have a look since it's dark now?
Yeah, let me see if I can pick anything up.
Okay.
show me where it is?
Yeah, it's quite hard in the dark. It was around here. Yeah, in fact it was, because I remember that hole. And she reckoned he died right here.
She thinks right here is where he died.
Yeah. I don't like it when the cars don't pass. There's also been stories of his ghost wandering up and down the highway, but all covered in blood and stuff. Are you getting anything from this spot?
No.
Do you want to take a walk up to where he crashed?
Yeah, because I'm not getting anything here. I want to see where he hit. What happened to the passenger, his mechanic?
He got thrown out.
Okay, but he survived.
He survived because there was an ambulance just up the road, and just by coincidence, and the ambulance came down. I think he broke his collarbone, and he was quite badly injured, but he survived.
You know where at all that the guy was thrown to, where he landed?
No.
Because right now I'm just feeling like someone just yelling, James. Oh God, James. Hang on.
What are you getting? What is it? Don't do that. Stop being weird.
It's not. I'm just trying to focus because I'm picking stuff up.
What are you getting?
When he hit, he was out of his body. He was dead. But he kept going in and out of his body.
He died instantly?
No.
Was he scared?
He wasn't in any pain.
Is he still here?
No, he's not still here, but I'm feeling what he felt when he was here. When he was out of his body, he was just looking at himself going, curious, like, that's me? That was me?
He was watching himself?
He was watching himself, yeah, in the accident. He'd, like, look back with a curiosity, like, what just happened? And part of him didn't care.
Do you think he does haunt here? Do you think he would have haunted here? Or do you think that's...
I think for a little while he was here out of curiosity because it was the last thing he remembers when he was alive. But I think he wanted to be free. And I guess, you know, it's funny because when I was interviewing Lizzie, she said that he was always upset and depressed because his mom died. And I think now, standing here, I can see what she was saying, that he had a morbid curiosity about death. And to him, it was a sense of freedom. And I think that's why he lived on the edge. Oh, boy.
Oh, it's the scene of where he died. Look, there's the car.
And that's the other car he hit. He hit right here. He knew seconds before, this is it. It's done, and I think maybe in a way he always knew he wasn't going to live out his whole life. That his time was going to come sooner than he thought. He wasn't sad. He wasn't upset.
Mine's sad.
The next morning, and our sadness was yet to lift. Chris and I stopped at a diner to discuss if our search for the spirit of James Dean had been successful.
What do you think that we've got out of, you know, this quest for looking for James Dean's spirit? How do you feel?
I think it was interesting. I mean, I learned a lot about James. You know, being a rebel, his need for speed, pretty much what everybody was saying, but it was nice to get closer to identifying his character.
I definitely think I've learned a lot. I didn't feel anything, I didn't find his spirit, but I definitely think that from interviewing everyone, I think he's a lot more complex than what we were led to believe.
Well, let me ask you this. When we were at the crash site, what did you feel? I mean, did you feel that he was at peace there?
No, I didn't feel anything there, but I felt really sad when I saw the picture and knowing what happened, and knowing that it's such a young actor, and that we're never going to know what he could have become. He could have become like the greatest actor actor we've ever known, or he could have become like a fat Elvis dying on a toilet, you know.
I didn't feel his presence as if he continues to visit that place. You know, I think he's still around, but he doesn't stay there.
See, I think he's at peace now.
But what do you mean by peace, though?
Well, I don't think he's around anymore. I don't think he comes down here anymore. I think he's somewhere else that none of us can get to him. My last thing for you, ironically enough, 13 days before James Dean died, he filmed a safety commercial for the National Highway Safety Commission, and he stood, and his last lines to camera were, "Take it easy, because the life that you saved could be mine." Bizarre, isn't it?
James Dean once said, "You must bridge that gap between life and death and go on living even after you're dead." With that encouragement in mind, we set off on our next investigation.